He is Gerad Parker, head coach at Troy. I'm John Brice of footballscoop.com. This is the Our Coaching Network podcast, yet another of our early 2025 editions. GP, we should certainly appreciate you taking some time out to visit with us.
Listen, if it's for you and for football and a little bit of fun, I'm all in. So all jokes aside, I'm happy to be a part of it. Glad to be on.
Now, for me, it was getting to come down and visit you last year in Troy, not quite a year ago, but closing in on about 11 months or so since I visited you early in your stages as the new head coach at Troy, right as you guys were donning the pads and getting into maybe your second week of spring camp. So, what has the last year been like for you, and where are you as you get ready for spring camp number two? Where do you feel definitively better as a head coach?
Well, I'll say this. I think you don't know what you don't know. And I know that sounds so simple to say, but really what I mean is all the things you can try to predict. I've done a lot more reading in this past year, and especially these last 4 months, than I probably ever have. And some strong conversations about better planning and better methods to what we're doing. And I think for me, like there is this great idea of all things can be planned and work. And the fact of that the matter is you can plan all you want to be prepared to react to what can happen in a season, what does happen in a season. To say that year doesn't matter and that you'll be different in year two, I think would not be fair to the profession and to where we are. So really just year one, I could go through it. We don't have a long enough time to go through my mistakes or anything like that. But at the same time, I'm grateful for the year one and grateful for all the things that we had to do in year one with roster management and all the new and the adjustments of new and all the changes in college football that I think just better prepare you for a year two. You might as well, if you're going to go through it, you might as well go in it. So we're in it. It didn't go exactly how I would have put it down on a Christmas wish list. But we feel strongly about heading into year two with a little different energy.
And we'll get to that because you certainly closed year one with some impressive energy, winning 3 of your last 4. You mentioned there you've read a lot, you've talked to a lot of people. I wonder, would you mind sharing maybe some of the people you've sought counsel from after that first year of being a head coach, or even over the course of that first year of being a head coach, and what are maybe some of the ideas that you've been able to grasp from those conversations?
Yeah, I think first, maybe in the people, you would be not surprised by our conversations of who those would be. I had a hour-long conversation right in the middle of hell, if you will, when you're 1-6 with Jason Simpson to get some perspective. And Simp was phenomenal. Marcus was very steady in his communication and help with me, and simplistic as it may seem, and just hearing from him and thinking about things that he had went through and or just asking the right questions. And so was James at Penn State.
Okay.
Those were really the three pivotal pieces for me, and that gave me guidance throughout the coaching profession. And then it's your wife at home and bouncing it off that way. And then the reading stuff, I just pulled a lot from either notes I'd already put in my phone from many moons ago or from stuff that people had given me along the way to try to just provide some perspective. All I was trying to hunt was not necessarily ideas, maybe just some perspective. How do I provide a step towards us improving with some perspective? And though that's what reading did for me, a coffee in this office that you've been to early in the morning before everybody else gets in here, and some reading time, I think is what I've found to be healthy.
Are you adapted enough to the cold plunge that you can read now as you take your cold plunge? Is that still a part of your daily routine?
It is when off the road to recruiting, it certainly has remained. And as well as I do, it don't matter how many times you've done it, you're not reading in there, you're fighting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I appreciate you saying that. I know it because I was hoping selfishly that you would acknowledge the fact that I took the cold plunge with you.
You did it.
I don't even remember how damn cold the water was, but I stayed a little over 3 minutes and you stayed for 5 minutes, which was insanity. But anyway.
That was 44 degrees. I mean, that was a real test.
Yeah. Okay. All right. 44 degrees. There we go. Got it documented on video now for posterity's sake. You're cheating a little bit. I asked you any talking points that you specifically wanted to go over before we started recording. You didn't give any, but it's like you're looking at my notes already because you just brought up Candy and you just brought up James Franklin and Marcus and Simpson. And I want to get to all of those. But Candy is your wife. She's a rock. If I'm not mistaken, she might have been an all state basketball player. So, I guess I've got to ask, how many letters can she spot you in horse and still win? And then how much has that Louisa and the area of Eastern Kentucky where you grew up continued to shape you today?
This is a good question. You took some notes. Listen, I'll be humble and honest. If you play horse, she's hard to beat. Still now. That's just the facts. If you're set shooting and playing a game of horse, it's going to be hard to beat her still right now. So I'll give her the nod. I will not discuss our last game of one-on-one, but as far as just straight shooting, she wins. To your other question, another piece of it, I would say, I think it's a lot. I don't want to name drop. I'm not that guy. I think I've proven that to you and everybody that knows me. But Jason Michael was my high school quarterback for 2 years at the front of this thing, and he's the reason I got into football because I cut a deal with him. And
Okay.
and he just won a Super Bowl as a tight ends coach for the Eagles. And so you can't help but root for the place that helped mold who you are and the people of it. And so it does make you just go back to certain things. My mom and dad are down this week visiting with us, and we just took our daughter to Enterprise, Alabama, which is about an hour away to do some travel volleyball stuff. And I remember those trips, to Huntington and other places where we had to go get better, to go seek different ways of improving. Because the one thing my dad did a really good job of is he knew he didn't have the answers. I mean, he's a diesel mechanic by trade. He didn't have the answers for how to improve. So he went and found help. So we drove a lot, and those car rides are stuff that builds you. And to be able to be a part of some of those and still have my dad, in that truck last night, it's a pretty cool feeling. So there's a lot that's still there. And I know Candy feels the same about Olive Hill, her hometown, and just what that is to both of us. That I hope never leaves us. And I don't believe it will by now. We're getting too old.
You're authentic. You're as authentic as it comes. Again, he is Gerad Parker, head coach at Troy. I'm John Brice of Football Scoop here on the Our Coaching Network podcast, and we talk about your roots and your home there of Louisa, Kentucky. And I'm going to use this to segue into my next question, and that is, you're so dedicated to your roots that last month at the AFCA convention, when you hosted the private Rats Pack clinic, you made the password Louisa so that thirsty coaches could grab a 12-ounce curl if they needed to. So I think that shows nobody was around, and you said the password's Louisa. I wrote, if you know, you know. But the Rat Pack has been one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about the last three AFCA conventions, and your hospitality and welcoming me into this secret fraternity of coaches. If you could explain what it is and explain why it's so important to you and how much it's grown, because you were really humbled this year when you looked out and saw that it was standing room only in the ballroom in a downtown Charlotte hotel.
Well, and one, it wouldn't be what it is without great people. And honestly, you're going to say no and all that, but your coverage of it and your interest in it, and just wanting to see what it was then and is now, certainly has helped it grow. It started very simply, right? Phil Ratliff coached me in high school. He coached Jason Michael, who I just referenced. He coached Dante Wright, our defensive coordinator. His son is a member of our staff, and we lost him too soon, and he died right before the season at Charlotte with Brad Lambert and his staff, and it was tragic, and it's he was as big. I mean, he's one of those personalities that was a really good man, really good husband and father, and a good football coach, and a true O-line guy. And when we would go together as we grew up, and our relationship went from player coach in high school to then a mentor to then coaching with him, we used to all get together and do what ball coaches used to do, which was to be pretty kind to each other, get together and maybe have a 12-ounce curl and talk ball, and celebrate being around each other because it's a long season, right? And then when we lost him, I just said, "There's no way that we can't continue that." So it may have started in a hotel room with some beer in a bathtub, and then I would like to think one of my qualities, or maybe sometimes I take it too far, is to think pretty big. So I said, "Well, hell with this. We're running out of room in a hotel room. We need to get a room every year." So that room kind of started in office size, and then it's grown, and now we, as you'd stated, we have a ballroom, and all it is to honor a great man and honor the profession the right way instead of worrying about what others may think or the presentation value. And then it's also to allow guys that need jobs, that are going through a rough patch, or young coaches, to give them a platform to set in front of a bunch of different levels of coaches and practice their craft and teach this game and give somebody a nugget or two. And it's really grown. And this year, I will say that was the first time I really looked back at the room and said, "Wow, look what this has become."
Yeah, and I think even when we wrote about it on Football Scoop, I stole one of the photos you had sent me from the front of the room and used it with the story, and it was impactful and powerful to see basically every chair filled and guys ringing the back wall and standing there and really dialed in to honoring coach, but then also to learning ball and networking and meeting from one another. And gosh, you had Trey Lamb in there, the new head coach at Tulsa, your head coach at Troy, Jeff Ferris in there, Dante in there, Trevor Mendelson, one of the best young offensive line coaches anywhere in ball. Jason Phillips, who's been an OC, and Ryan Booz from Alcorn. They were lurking around there. So many good people. I know I'm screwing up by leaving some folks out, but the power in that room is real, and it's a network that literally stretches coast to coast, but nobody's too big or too small for anybody in that room. How much do you appreciate that mindset?
Well, and again, I know, I mean, hell, we all make mistakes, John, and I have believe me, so have I. But I don't know if, I hope I haven't made too many mistakes with people. And I think if we treat people well, if we're direct, we can still be direct, tough, and honest, but we can treat people well. And I think in this world of competition, we have to program our minds certain ways to try to be elite at this thing we call coaching. And heck, I've got my list of things and people and things I do to motivate myself. But when it comes to the profession, we can put down whatever those are and serve this profession. And I've said sing it because I've been at the bottom of it and scope through it on all levels, to the medium, to the upper echelon, if you will, and all in between. And you realize very quickly, you better at least do that, because the circle is the circle. You're probably going to be coaching with somebody. So you better choose a little bit of kindness and serve the profession the right way. Because number one, I believe it's the right way to live. And then number two, it's the world. You're going to see each other.
And number three, if you didn't, Candy would put you in line. But it is who you
Now,
are.
that's
You are maybe in 20 plus years of me being a sports journalist, specifically covering college football, you're as genuine as it gets. It's something I'll forever appreciate about you. And you just touched on that, and you're leading me into another thing I got to witness last spring in Troy that also ties into the Rat Pack. And you said something that I wrote that I'll remember forever. It is, if you be good to the game will be good to you and love the game back to you. How do you show your players that every day? And are you still doing the thing that you did last year to start spring camp, where you basically gave guys pop quizzes about their random teammates just to foster a better bond and a better unity in your locker room, and maybe explain why that was important to you?
Yeah, well, it's there's a lot to try to dissect through, and how you're trying to help serve your staff, and the players. I would, first, to the last piece you brought up, that big brother, whatever that is, to where you assign it. We're certainly kind of in that realm now, since recruiting is over with, and get our new into our old and make sure that they can feel each other and connect. And there's no way to do that unless you know them. So we've got to know each other's names and work through it. And we're right in that phase now. And then, forgive me, the first part of your question, I almost forgot since we got held up.
Just about how you show on a daily basis about treating football well and loving football, and it will treat you well and love you back.
Yeah, I think I appreciate you remembering that, and I believe that and mean that. I don't think it's any different than being giving to the people you love, or the charities, or however you choose to practice faith. it comes back tenfold. It may not be exactly sometimes when we want it to, but in my opinion, it does, and it's no different than how you treat people. And I believe this. I tell them a lot. I'm emotional. I really am. I don't consider that a bad thing. Sometimes I've had to control it, but I like telling them how I feel about them. I like giving them constant feedback, some that's constructive criticism and some not, to make sure that they know where they stand. But I don't want anybody to say, "Hey, I never met with the head coach. We meet with our GAs, meet with the analysts, meet with all our coaches, do evaluations, go with all of our players and meet and connect and have single meetings," to give everybody a sense of, we're connected. You have feedback. Here's where you can grow if you want to be great. Here's where I see it, and just give them time. And time is valuable, but if we don't feed time in as the head coach back to our staff and players and be intentional, somebody will not feel that. So I think I've done a good job of that. If you were to ask that, that's something that we've worked really hard at. And I hope that's my greatest quality. If I go down in this life and business that way, and that's what they say, I'll deal with the rest of it.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about now your current team as you lead us into it. And I did allude to the fact closed last year really strong, winning 3 out of 4. You also had a very significant, as it turned out in the conference standings, win along the way against Georgia Southern. How much do you bring back? How much healthier do you think you're going to be this year? And what do you like about this team, both with what you've added and what you've brought back?
Yeah. I'm going to dodge this question to some degree, but I appreciate the question. And here's what I'll say. We feel good about going into year 2. The retention of our roster was critical. There's 2 significant losses, you would say, of portal guys, which are just part of it.
Yeah.
Past that, as far as retaining our current roster, we were very successful and feel really good about keeping players here. So a lot of our players are here that have now played. Guys understand the struggle, failure, loss, and have come out the other side of it, thank goodness. And finishing the way we did after experiencing that much failure and loss kind of has you ready for what this game can do. There's no guarantee that Troy's going to win. We all learned that valuable lesson. We can say Troy's a winning place. It is, and it still is. But we're not immune to what can happen if you don't have certain things in place and if you don't do what it takes to play winning football and improve. And so we feel really good about this roster that was here. And then the pieces of just a cycle of recruiting, John, that we were able to start all year long and be ready for December and January compared to just starting in January, that it would be like any other school. It's just significant, and so to get ourselves out in front of that, we feel really good about who we acquired as well, because we put in a full year's work of recruiting those people. So we feel strongly about the job that was done from our recruiting staff on through our coaches to get this roster in a position to go at 2025.
And one thing I like about you, and I don't want to focus on it too much, but when I was down there a year ago, you told some of those guys, listen, if you ball out and you can go play at Power 5, we'll help you do that. And if I'm not mistaken, your 1,000-yard receiver ended up going into the portal, and now he's with one of your former mentors in James Franklin at Penn State. That's commendable, because a lot of people might give that lip service and not follow through with it. And I think your players will see that and see that you live that. And you talk about the offseason and the continuity and knowing more what to expect. You also were able to hang on to your strength coach, Daryl Bauer, and he's been at some big-time places. What are the ways that you're seeing his impact maybe even take deeper root here as you do transition into year 2, GP?
Yeah. Again, 2 really good questions and points. I think into the position of losing who we lost, it's simple. Is there a chance of this? If there's not, how can I help? Because if it's something that just makes sense and there's whatever, then we need to treat it the right way. If it's something that is a comparable whatever, then that's probably not going to be met with the same kindness. But if it's not, we need to be able to talk. So we talk every day and deal with it and handle it like a man instead of making it more than what it is. I think for our staff, again, the second piece of it you asked, John, sorry.
Yeah, about Daryl and just bringing him back
Yeah.
into the strength program specifically.
Yeah. So, and he, like for anything now, there's so many things we know about our weight room setup, things that we wanted to enhance that he was ready to take on. The hiring process of graduate assistants, like I think that's a big step and strength of his is not only the job he does on the floor, but it's the job he does to make sure that we have all the graduate assistants and student assistants you need to run the programs. Daryl does that great. And then all the technology and increases in everything we use to help with our player development, we just took another huge step. And then if you talk to the players and say, all right, what else can we do? They wanted to, right now, this guy's getting ready to do yoga. They wanted more yoga options or think. He's not afraid to think outside the box to make us better. We're tying in our workouts to more football movements than we are just saying, hey, let's do what we've done for 30 years and do a typical county fair where you just train and put guys through it in your winter sessions. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but if we can do more football movements and teach some things that we know we're going to teach on the field, but we can still get our conditioning piece in, why not? And that his adaptability is what is allowed to give us this feeling of knowing where our plan is.
This is the Our Coaching Network podcast. He is Troy head coach Gerad Parker. I am John Brice of footballscoop.com. We've had you on about 20 minutes, so I don't want to abuse your time. Just a couple more here, more of the quick hitter variety, and that is all right. You already referenced James Franklin, who you worked with previously. You've referenced Marcus Freeman, and you've referenced Jason Simpson, who I've said on this pod before. I'll say it again. Low-key might have the most widespread coaching tree of anybody in the country. So, what's one thing about Jason Simpson, James Franklin, and Marcus Freeman? One thing about each of those three coaches that nobody knows.
Ooh. Okay, I'll go James Franklin first. Fast walker. Love the game we used to play where we would try to say hello to every person we passed, and we kept score about who would say hi to us or who wouldn't. So tremendously competitive and is often misunderstood. Let's see. Jason Simpson, ahead of his time in offensive game planning,
Yeah.
tempo use, and allowing his coaches to do jobs they may not have been ready for. He let us learn on the go. Great quality. Marcus Freeman, relentless competitor, most competitive personality or person I had met in my life. And his friendship and the growth of who he is no surprise to me. One thing I would not know. Let's see. Maybe that he's a little bit better of a hooper than what everybody would imagine.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I would give Free that. Back in the day, we used to play some pickup at Purdue and would go at it some. So those used to be the fun days.
All right, I like that, and that's pretty incredible. And one more, speaking about you and you being true to who you are, and it goes to the Rat Pack. Jeep Wade was another guy in that room last month at AFCA, and I think maybe you might have had to sleep on his couch or something when you first got to UT Martin or something like that. So this is a chance for you. We always try to ask something fun. What's an odd job or a task that you had to do early on in your coaching career before you were a Notre Dame OC or helping West Virginia get things down the stretch as acting OC, get things right a few years ago, or now the head coach at Troy? What's one of those early jobs, early tasks that you were just like, I want to be in coaching, I got to suck it up and do this?
Both are at UT Martin easily. Simple, remember these. But first day on the job, I had to move a scissor lift from an area down at Martin to get it ready to being the film tower. And I'd never driven a scissor lift. I didn't know how to start it, let on move it. And there was no help or assistance done by anybody. I think it was a rite of passage, and they were probably videoing me from far away. But that one was an interesting one. And then also we moved out and got new lockers that same year. And so there was a big dumpster out there, and somehow, some way, I found myself in that dumpster throwing away wooden lockers outside of the Martin locker room.
I like that. I like that a lot. All right. What about growing up? Any odd job? Didn't you tell me you used to give youth sports lessons in your neighborhood there in Eastern Kentucky? Is that right?
Oh, that's a fact. Yeah, I mean, it's a simple deal, right? Done with your dad. He said, I'll pay for half the basketball camps. I really thought I was going to be a hooper and started to really take it serious. I'll pay half, you pay half. So One of the jobs was I'll mix up my own lemonade out of the powder packs. I'll have everything ready and do ball handling camps and shooting camps in our backyard for all the kids in the neighborhood or anybody in town who wanted to have a little babysitting and teach. And those are my 12 and 13-year-old years. So I started coaching early.
That's incredible right there. That's absolutely what I want to know now is how can I get like Fred McGriff was a spokesman for Tom and Mansky baseball skills for so long. I need a Gerad Parker basketball skills t-shirt. All right, I'm going to let you go now. I'm leaving with this. You showed up last month in Atlanta at the college football playoff championship. Obviously, you've already alluded to your close friendships with Marcus Freeman and James Franklin, but you were also there because even sitting in the stands, you wanted to support those guys at Notre Dame that you'd coached for a couple of years and been around for a couple of years. Just as we leave, Gerad Parker, head coach at Troy, why was that so important to you?
Well, I think your presence to support friends and guys you believe in, that you coach, that you still had strong emotions for, the best compliment sometimes you can do is show up, and you better practice what you preach. So I would have wanted Marcus and Joanna to come if that were flipped around, and I believe they would. And I wanted to go support them because we've been through it all together and dreamed of those moments and those players, that offense, and those tight ends and those guys afforded us a wonderful 2 years. And I thought you better practice what you preach and go support people you've cared about and that have cared for you. And the only way to do that is to show up. And you ain't got to put a picture on Twitter or put it out there for everybody to see. You just show up and go support and root like hell.
That you're the most unassuming head coach maybe in all of college football. I certainly appreciate that. And you were there, and Brian Mason was there, and hard to speak to a better character than the two of you. GP, thanks so much for joining us here on the Our Coaching Network podcast.
Truly my pleasure. I mean that.
All right, thanks a lot. He is Troy head coach Gerad Parker. I'm John Brice of FootballScoop.com. This has been the Our Coaching Network podcast. Until the next time, thanks for tuning in.